Welcome back, everyone. Season 3, Episode 2 of What Are Your Thoughts? Today's topic, as I mentioned in the intro, is talking about how we calculate retirement income for clients and different ways to do that, right? So there's a couple different options. We can look at how much that the client has and say, hey, here's the maximum amount that you can spend from that. And then, hopefully that number that they're able to spend is in line with their spending goals. Excuse me. Otherwise, looking at, a monthly goal, like if someone said, hey, I want to spend $8,000 a month in retirement, then we'd say, okay, here's what you have and here's what you're projected to have. Now, how do we go about getting to a number that is adequate enough to spend that $8,000? However, if we took a step back, and that's really what I want to talk about in this episode, is just the art versus the science of calculating that retirement income amount, because it's so personal to each client. And I'm thinking back here to a conversation I had over the holidays in 2021, and the client asked, what's a normal number that people spend? And that number, it varies so much because everyone's different. And, there are people that, I have a client of mine that had a 7-figure income last year, but lives like he makes $100,000 a year. So it varies, and it's really based on lifestyle and how that client views their lifestyle, which is a personal number to them as far as expenses go. And I had another question from a friend of ours. We were out to dinner, and she's like, well, you should tell them, right? You should tell them how much they need to spend in retirement. I'm like, well, it doesn't necessarily work just like that. We have to go in and develop that strategy revolving around their personal goal, right? If I gave them a goal, or if I told them, hey, here's what you can spend, it's $5,000 a month, but they're used to spending $8,000 a month, that is, in my opinion, going to be really tough for them to meet that, because they're just not used to spending that amount. And cutting down expenses, by 30-40% in retirement might be doable, but it's not what the client is used to, and it might not lead them to, a fulfilling retirement. So we have to really figure out what the client's goal is. And when we develop that, that's one of the toughest questions that I will ask clients is, how much do you need to live on in retirement? Because a lot of times they don't necessarily know. And so I have a client that is looking to retire probably in the next year-ish. And he actually, came up with this idea, which is a great idea. And we were just talking through his retirement income, and he's like, well, why don't I just record all my expenses for 6 months? As much as that is going to suck and, be relatively tedious, why don't I just record and see where we're at, and then we can develop a retirement income amount based off of that. Because there's so many things that just pop up as one-time expenses throughout the year that still occur when people are retired. So that's one way to do it. But also, how I think about things is, okay, what do you take home right now? Like, as you're working, Mr. or Mrs. Client, whatever, what do you take home right now? And then we can at least say, okay, if we're starting from a baseline, which is how I like to do planning, is start from a baseline. I would look at, okay, here's where you're at, and you want to bring, or you currently take home $8,000 a month. Well, here is what your current asset level, will distribute as far as how we can create an income plan in retirement, and where they're at relative to that $8,000 amount that they're currently living on. So that can establish a baseline, and then, we get clients that, again, the art versus the science, and I could do an entire episode on this, but people that, one of the biggest questions I get is, should I pay off my mortgage as I enter retirement? And the science, right, the math says probably not, right? Interest rates are low. Just, extend that loan as long as you possibly can with low rates. The art side of it, the art adds a little bit more to the equation in terms of, well, if you paid, the $100,000 or whatever the amount is that's left on your mortgage, that would free up $1,000 a month or $1,200 or whatever the number is. But that could be serious money in terms of income plan dollars for that retirement income goal. So it really just comes down to the client's personal goal. And if I give them the goal, it becomes less effective, and it's tough for the client to really latch on to that and have a successful plan. And just making sure that there's, again, the art versus science, right? Like I can plug it into a planning software and I can say, hey, here's your plan. You have $2 million and, also some Social Security, and you're going to easily be able to live on $100,000 a year. But there's so many different factors, right? If they aren't able to live on 100,000, which, again, these numbers are just arbitrary, but there are people out there that, are unable to do that, then it might have a 100% success rate in the planning software, but a 0% real success rate in reality. So when working with clients, it's important to develop a goal or multiple goals for them that are in line with where they want to go and what will be the most fulfilling for them. So again, there's a couple different ways to do it. So after we develop that goal that is in line with what they want, we can go back, and again, I establish that baseline. And if someone comes to me and says, hey, continuing with the $2 million example, they say, hey, I have $2 million in Social Security. I can run the numbers and say, hey, here's what that would be able to distribute. Here's your level of, percent funded, we'll call it, in retirement, and see what they think about that. And there's different ways to do it. And that's where the art comes in is, okay, you simply have enough money. Now, what accounts do we pull from first? Or how do we actually develop this income stream in reality? And again, and I feel like this whole year is really going to be focused on getting that edge in planning and retirement and just investing, right? How do you gain a little bit of an edge? Because that edge can compound just like your retirement dollars. So that's the first way, right? Give a lump sum. Like a lot of times you hear people say, like, what asset level do I have to get to meet my goals? It's like, well, what are your goals? Or they say, what asset level do I have to get at? Hard stop. And they'll say, well, what are your goals, right? Or do you want to live on $500,000 a year? Do you want to live on $100,000 a year? So it's a personal number. So the first way to do it is, you come with a dollar amount, and we develop that income strategy, what accounts to take from when, and how to go about doing that, all in line with your goals. The second way to do it is if you have an income amount that you are targeting, and this is really interesting because if you listen to the first episode talking about the COVID mindset shift, people are thinking, hey, why not live partially on some assets now and then work at a job where it's less stress and less pay, and maybe do kind of a hybrid strategy? Well, you can say, okay, I need to distribute $4,000 a month, and then I'll from my investment accounts, and then I'll make up the other $4,000 with employment income. That's totally fine. So how to do that we'd have to come up then, if we have an income goal, come up with a dollar amount that needs to be saved. And there's a lot of strategy revolving around what we call the 4% rule, right? Which is just you should be, the classic rule is that you're able to distribute 4% of your portfolio per year as long as it stays invested. And I think the mix that is referenced in that study is a 60-40, which is a 60% stock or stock ETF allocation and then a 40% bond allocation. Without getting too far into the weeds on pros and cons of that, thinking about with clients, again, walking them through the art and science of retirement income, a 4% amount for someone that is in 100% cash, that doesn't make any sense because, the cash is going down by 4% and then inflation on top of it, which right now inflation, the metrics are 6 to 7%, hasn't been like that historically. The historical metric over the past 25, 50, 75, 100 years is somewhere, on average right around 3%. Give or take maybe 0.5%. But, the point there is, when we're developing or calculating retirement income, there's so many different factors than just, here's your retirement number. We're thinking through different things to, again, gain that edge in your financial planning so that you can have a successful retirement. So staying with this example, right, if you're able to distribute 4%, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but if you're able to distribute 4% and you have $1 million, that's $40,000 per year. And depending again on what type of account that is, right, is it an IRA, is it a 401k, is it a Roth IRA, is it just a taxable brokerage account? To get 40,000 from a 401k or an IRA, you have to take out more than the 40,000 because there will be some tax liability associated with that distribution. Assuming you're over 59.5. We're not thinking about the 10% penalty as well. But again, how to calculate or factors to consider when calculating your retirement income are account types, inflation, how the portfolio is invested. And that's what I really have to convey to clients is the first thing is that the stock market is not your portfolio. So there's rarely a time in retirement where a client would own, the Dow Jones ETF or the S&P 500 ETF exclusively. They're not going to do that because it doesn't make sense for a variety of reasons, risk, volatility, etc., that the client just won't do that. So when we're calculating and trying to build out that retirement scenario, there's a blend. And so for people to think, there's two different there's two different ways of thinking there. The first one is, I had a client last year that was like, well, yeah, we'll just take 7% of my portfolio out per year and then we won't ever have to touch the principal. It's like, yes, again, if you listen to the first episode of this season talking about the compound annual growth rate of the S&P 500 index fund that I mentioned through Vanguard, I think it was like somewhere between 11, we'll just call it 11. I think it was between 11 and 12 over the past 40, 50 years. And so, yeah, that makes sense. But again, if you take out 7% per year, no matter what, there will be years where it's down, and then you take out, if it's down 10% and you take out another 7, that decreases your total portfolio. So being smart with how we calculate the retirement income is important, but also in reality, the art factor of how and when and the rules you establish to take the money out of the portfolio is also very, very important to sustain that portfolio for a 30, 40-year retirement or a hybrid retirement. So again, gaining that edge, right? You can calculate the science. You can calculate how much your portfolio can spin off in retirement. But the art factor is there's different rules that need to be used for that retirement income. Are you comboing in some pension income, some social security income, some annuity income on top of your what we'd call a variable income source, like investment accounts that you're pulling money out of that are invested in the market, and the market meaning the stock market and the bond market, or maybe the real estate market, right? Not, I say the market, but there's different types of markets in an investment portfolio. But anyway, are you factoring in those variable income sources, and do you have the optionality and different levers that you can pull so that that portfolio can be sustained to meet that income goal that we established early on in our planning relationship? And oh, by the way, the income goal can be ever changing as kids grow up, debts get paid, income, needs change over time. And with age, a lot of times, people are not spending as much as they were when they're, 80 or 85 versus what they were when they retired at 60, 65, 68, whatever the number is. So again, the point here is that there are just so many different factors, and what we want to do is gain that edge when we're calculating retirement income. You can either start with an investment dollar, a portfolio value amount, and calculate what you'd be able to distribute from that from a math and science standpoint, or you can come up with a monthly income spend and then reverse it back to how much would you need to meet that spending goal. Once you've figured those out, and the advisor can absolutely help with that, but I don't think that the advisor gives the client that number as far as, hey, here's what you can spend in retirement. Because if that is not in line with what the client is used to, it, from a mathematics standpoint, it might be 100% success, but from a reality or an art or a real standpoint, it's probably lower than that. So once you figure out how much you're able to spend or your goal for the spending amount, then the art comes into play with how you go about constructing that retirement income stream. Are you going to be more on the scale of trusting that your investment portfolio will distribute the correct percentage to meet your goal? Do you want some guarantees with pensions and annuities and things like that? There's multiple ways to do it, and that is very specific to each individual investor. And that is because people are molded by their life experiences and, frankly, when they even started investing and what they've seen as performance from their portfolios in the past and how they feel about risk. And again, gaining that edge. The goal for me is to help the client with that, to come up with something customized as a solution for them. So A, they can sleep well at night, and B, make sure that they don't run out of money. So I'll cut it off here, but I hope that everything makes sense to everyone. If you have any questions, send me an email, info@lifepointplanning.com. This episode was supposed to dive into how we calculate different ways for retirement income, the art versus the science, and having, goals that are in line with what a real success rate would be rather than just a mathematical success rate. So, happy investing to everyone, and we will catch you next time. Thank you so much for listening.